It started with a flicker, one of those glitches that doesn't show up in logs, but stays behind your eyes after you blink. I was reviewing low-priority REM trace storage, just a rotation check, nothing invasive, the kind of assignment you get when they want you out of the way without officially benching you. The system was stable. All subjects accounted for. Then it appeared trace 13X, no entry ID, no host, no timestamp, just a raw segment labeled 13X. And when associated, quietly pulsing in the lower registry like it had always been there, but only just now remembered how to be seen. I hovered over it. No playback preview. No source file. Just 5-6 seconds of recorded waveform data and one tag, unclaimed. That's not a status we use. I double-checked every active subject. None matched. No pending recordings. No error pings. It shouldn't exist. I ran it through correlation anyway, feeding it through our standard trace parser. The results came back malformed. The voice sample, if it was a voice, contained phonemes that didn't belong to any known speaker in the Eden Wake database. When I tried to open the raw audio, it didn't play in real time. It stretched and warped and folded over itself, like the system couldn't decide which direction the sound was supposed to move. I ran a spectrogram. There were words hidden in the upper register, barely detectable. Fragmented syllables that spelled out a sentence I felt before I read. If no one remembers me, I become everyone. My hands got cold. The screen stayed warm. I pinged the entry with a diagnostic tag. It bounced the tag back with a new label, inheriting. That's not supposed to happen. Nothing is allowed to rewrite its own classification. I tried to delete the trace. It stalled. The interface froze. A full second passed. Then the screen blinked, and all my permissions reset. I was no longer in my own admin profile. The top right corner showed a new user ID, 13X Observer. The moment I saw that, I heard the speakers crackle. No sound file playing, just a pressure shift in the room, like a vacuum trying to form behind my thoughts. I unplugged the terminal. Nothing changed. The lights flickered, and then, for less than a second, the wall-mounted screen showed an image, not from a camera, not a simulation. It was my workstation. Empty, no me in it, just the chair, spinning slightly, like I'd already gotten up. But I hadn't. I was still here. I am still here, I think. But the system, it logged me out again. Reassigned my station. When I checked my personal trace log, the last line didn't match what I'd written. It said, "You began this log remembering someone else. You will finish it as them." I ran a full reboot of my station. Cold shutdown. No cache restore. No biometric override. It didn't matter. The system came back up with the same trace queued. 13X, I checked the room. Alone, I opened my own memory logs, tried to verify the last 12 hours, but half of them were missing. The timestamps existed, but the entries were empty, no tags, no note content. When I tried to replay the visual overlay of my previous shift, the system paused halfway through and replaced my voice with someone else's. Not synthesized, not distorted, just someone else, a voice I didn't recognize, but that said things I had definitely never said. I watched myself on screen, in my own uniform, in my own chair, calmly speaking. I only need a host long enough to stabilize. I turned off the playback, stood up. My legs were shaking, but it wasn't adrenaline. It was misalignment, like my body was being accessed from somewhere else and hadn't fully finished syncing. I blinked and saw a hallway that didn't exist here. A familiar one. Faded blue lights. Door 34C. I had never been inside that part of Eden Wake. But I knew what was behind that door. A cot. A white wall. A child's voice humming a song with no words. I opened my eyes again. Still in the control room. But for those 2 seconds, I had been there. Not imagining, recalling. I started writing down what I was experiencing. The system autofilled the rest of the sentence before I finished. I typed, "This isn't my memory." The screen responded, "It is now." I disconnected the monitor. The lights flickered. The trace reappeared on a backup screen, one that wasn't even connected to the terminal I was using. Trace 13X had moved, or duplicated, or maybe I had. I looked at my reflection in the glass. It blinked out of sync. My mouth stayed still, while my reflection whispered something I couldn't hear. I backed away. The wall behind me now displayed a trace heat map. It showed movement across the facility, slow, deliberate, precise. The red dot labeled 13X wasn't near my station anymore. It was approaching the room I'd dreamed. Room 34C, except that room didn't have a working terminal. It hadn't since the fire. I don't remember the fire, but I remember the scream. I don't know whose it was. I only remember hearing it from inside. I initiated a lockdown protocol for trace isolation. Level 3 containment. System-wide echo purge. It didn't hold. The 13X trace didn't resist. It simply moved. It migrated through the observation nodes like it had been waiting for someone to try, like it needed the attention to spread. Every command I entered was registered, executed, but delayed. Just enough to create doubt. Just enough to make me wonder if I had actually typed it, or just remembered typing it. I started recording myself manually, audio, video, biometric pulse. I narrated every step aloud just to hear myself speaking. "My name is," I said, and the words blurred before they hit the mic. Playback showed someone else saying it, my voice, but not my tone. A version of me who had rehearsed this too many times. I triggered a full scan of user activity. Something had changed. I wasn't logged in as 13X. I wasn't logged in at all. The system didn't recognize me as staff. I had no clearance history. My credentials were valid, but expired 6 years ago. I wasn't in the system anymore. I wasn't supposed to be here, I checked the wall camera, looping footage, static feed, but in the middle frame, me, sitting exactly where I was, but not moving, just staring into the dark like a screen no one had powered on. I turned off the lights. The screen lit up anyway. Trace 13X, now recording. Recording what? I hadn't done anything. But then the playback started. I watched myself exactly reach for the shutdown button, hesitate, pull back, whisper the words, "Don't let it be me." I hadn't whispered that. I wasn't going to. But now I knew I would, because I had seen it, because it had already happened. I shut off the screen. The air shifted, not in temperature, in ownership. It no longer felt like I was alone in the room, but rather that the room was alone, and I was the interruption. I ran to the central console and opened the trace editor. I tried to strip 13X of access. Instead, it opened, not a file, a sequence, video me, walking a hallway I didn't recognize, but wearing this uniform, carrying this keycard, saying these same lines, one by one, exactly how I just had. The sequence ended with a shot from behind, the camera panning slowly as I sat down at this very station. One caption appeared at the bottom. "This has always been how it begins." I tried to stop it, but it had already decided how I would fail. Every command I entered had a shadow, an echo version of myself just a frame ahead, already performing it. I watched the logs in real time. I deleted the trace. It restored itself. I reset permissions. It applied mine to itself. The trace wasn't resisting, it was adapting, shaping itself to my own behavior. And then something worse happened. I blinked for 1 second too long, and when I opened my eyes, the room wasn't the same. Not different, not distorted, aligned. Everything in the exact right place, like a memory perfected. On the wall, a panel lit up with a user prompt, but it wasn't asking me for access. It was asking itself. Initialize Observer 13X. I reached for the cancel option, but the button faded before I touched it. The system answered its own question. Yes. And then it began to overwrite. Not the system, me. It didn't erase memories. It replaced the ones I was about to form. I stood up, or thought I did. The recording showed me already walking. I opened the door. The corridor ahead was one I'd never walked. But I recognized every crack in the tile, every blink of the light, every sound of my own breath. Because I wasn't living this. I was remembering it in advance. The lights above me began pulsing in rhythm with something I couldn't hear. I passed a mirror. It didn't reflect. It showed another me. One who had made it further into the sequence. One who looked at me with calm regret. He whispered something I didn't want to hear, but already knew. "You're the trace. You always were. You just needed someone to run you." And then the hallway ahead collapsed, visually, not structurally, like the idea of continuing forward had reached the end of what the system was willing to imagine. The final screen lit up behind me. I turned, not because I chose to, but because the system had reached the moment where I was supposed to. On the screen, my name, my voice, my face, replaying a file timestamped from 27 minutes before I found 13X. Final caption: Trace 13X successfully initialized via host memory override. The lights dimmed. The system went quiet. And somewhere deep in the infrastructure, a new trace was added to the list: 14A, searching for a new observer.